Veronica presents the AI Repertory Theatre's production of New World Papers, Book 1, The Historian's Tale, by K.B. Shaw. Chapter 2, From Here to There.
I was sweeping dead leaves in the Mount's courtyard when I next spotted the spy in the chestnut tree. I had first noticed the spy back in the spring. Now 11 months had passed, and the dark nights and paralyzing snows of high conjunction were fast approaching. The air was crisp and tinged with the acrid smell of the fields that had been flash-burned after the harvest. The Mount is located a few kilometers upslope, or west, of Primacitta on the North Grade, a vast area of undulating hills north of the Riftwater River, which bisects New World from west to east. The North Grade is dotted with small farms and groves of fruit and nut trees, but it's mostly open fields of grain. From its vantage point atop a large hill, the Mount looks over expansive fields of wheat and oats. The openness of the plains allows for strong seasonal winds in the last 3 months of the cycle. The winds, a hard frost, and the setting sols conspired to reveal the spy. The chestnut tree, dappled in shades of russet and dark yellow, had begun to shed leaves. Sol Minor, in steady pursuit of its big brother, was just touching Sol Major as they descended directly behind the chestnut. Silhouetted amongst the thinning branches was the still form of the boy. I was considering whether or not to finally tell Headmaster Hunninger about the spy when someone entered the courtyard behind me.
Fallon, what the bee are you thinking?
I turned to face Dean Ambrose. The pink flush of his thin face stood out starkly from his black wool frock coat. He stood stiffly, clutching a sheaf of yellowed papers in one hand, and scowled over the wire-rimmed pince-nez perched low on his nose. Missy Howard was at his side, attired in her usual gray ankle-length dress and white cotton smock, with her hair pulled back severely. We hadn't been together in months. I hid my feelings, but I was still hurt and angry over the way she had broken things off. She gave me a stern look. Something was wrong. Were those my drawings in Ambrose's hand? The dean was awaiting my reply. I've described my 2 secret talents, but I may have a third, if you can call it a talent. I'm an excellent liar. Ambrose was a bit shorter than I am, so I had to look down to make eye contact. I found that good, solid eye contact is best when lying. Most people think you can't look them straight in the eye and lie. They're wrong. My voice was calm and innocent.
I am asking you, Fallon, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking of sweeping the courtyard, sir, just as Missy Howard instructed. Well, mostly that, sir. You see, as I was sweeping, I glanced up at the tree, the chestnut over the wall. I think there's...
No, not what are you thinking of. Not what are you thinking of right now. I mean...
The vein on his left temple stood out and pulsed as his face passed from pink to crimson. He raised his hand as if to strike me, as he often had when I was younger and shorter, but he only wagged the papers at me accusingly.
I mean, what are you thinking by having these?
I resisted shooting a look at Missy Howard. That would depend upon what those are, sir.
Don't wise-ass me, boy. If you weren't a ward of this institution, you'd be wandering the uplands, I dare say. So don't wise-ass me.
I struggled to keep my composure, telling myself that I'd be a free man in a little more than a month. I wanted to shout it in his face. My insides were gnarled and the pounding of my heart had fallen into rhythm with the dean's pulsing vein. But sir, my reply was neither wise nor asinine. I haven't a shade what it is you're flailing about in front of you, so how can I answer? It was Ambrose who broke eye contact first, looking to Missy Howard for support, then back at me.
I know you know perfectly well what I have.
He blustered. You know I know? How can you know what I know? I took a step back and pulled my best expression of fearful realization. Can you read my mind now? I had gone too far.
Fallon!
He wagged the roll of papers in the direction of the courtyard door.
Come with me. I'm taking you to the headmaster. He'll want an explanation. If you wise-ass him, ward or no ward, you'll be out on the street by the setting of Sol Mage.
I decided not to tell the dean about the spy. Why should I tell him or anyone about the boy in the tree now? The dean and Missy Howard started toward the mount. I hesitated, turned, and made eye contact with the boy in the tree, communicating my situation with a grin and a shrug. To my great surprise, the spy leaned out of the shadows and lifted the brim of his hat in a friendly greeting, or perhaps a farewell. I gasped when a mane of shaggy, copper-colored hair fell about the spy's shoulders. The spy was a girl, maybe a cycle my junior. Her hair fairly glowed in the soft reddish light of Sol Minor. It is an image that is vibrant in my mind to this day. If the revelation of the spy was a surprise, what awaited me in the headmaster's office was a complete shock. As soon as we entered the ornate confines of the entrance hall, the dean pushed me toward the grand staircase. Teachers and students, none of whom I could call friend, stopped and watched as I was marched up the wide stairs. The hall echoed with the buzz of whispered comments and the hiss of gas lamps. The sound reminded me of a hive of angry bees. The stairs split at a landing under a large stained glass window, depicting the fount of life soaring into a bright blue sky. The double doors of the headmaster's office were directly at the top of the left-hand flight. As we approached, Ambrose propelled me forward. Stumbling, I slammed against the doors and clutched the large brass handles for support, but my momentum drove them down, releasing the latching mechanism. As I fell, I heard the crash of the doors striking the walls and the cursing of Dean Ambrose. I glimpsed Headmaster Hunninger in the gap between two high-backed chairs that sat in front of his desk. The expression on his face was that of one who had been caught with his hand in the mince pie, and he anxiously slid a leather pouch from the desktop. Then my chin struck the hardwood floor, sending a lightning bolt of pain through my skull. My eyes tried to focus on the expanse of floorboards that lay before them.
Dean Ambrose,
Came Hunninger's voice.
What is the meaning of this intrusion?
It's Fallon, sir. Missy Howard found these in his room.
I heard the dean slam the papers onto the desk.
They're pages from some Solarist propaganda.
Not my drawings. What the bee is Missy Howard doing by claiming she found those, what do they call them, Solarist papers, in my room? I raised my head enough to see the dean standing in the gap between the two chairs.
And how could Solarist propaganda get within the walls of the Mount?
It was a woman's voice. The dean was as startled as I. He turned to his right and looked at the chair from which the voice had emanated.
I apologize, Headmaster,
Said Ambrose.
I did not realize you had a guest.
A very distinguished guest, Ambrose. Mrs. Mara Grier from Primacitta.
Grier. I knew the name held rank in Primacitta, the oldest and largest Citta on New World, as well as in Agricitta, near which the mount was located. Built on the very edge of the east rim of the basin, Primacitta was several sols from Agricitta. I wondered what important business would cause her to come so far.
I beg your pardon, madam.
Dean Ambrose bowed awkwardly to the guest and timidly backed away from the desk until he was behind my range of vision. When I gathered myself into a kneeling position, I saw the woman. She was elderly, maybe 40 cycles or so, 60-some annums, and stern-looking. She turned and looked down at me through dark eyes set into an alabaster face. Judging by her attire and bearing, she was a powerful Citta dweller, a very powerful Citta dweller. You'd expect the face of such a person to be pale, but something about her looks did not fit. Her silver hair was unusually short, almost mannish in its cut, and her face was etched and weathered by the elements, as if she were an agrarian from the fields. The woman turned back to face the headmaster.
May I look at that propagandist drivel?
All I could see was a tight, beaded sleeve of her black satin dress and her slender hand gesturing toward the sheaf of papers on the desk. Another detail didn't fit. Her nails were trimmed short like those of a manual laborer. The headmaster handed the sheaf to the lady. She clucked as she leafed through the papers and said,
This is the very boy about whom we spoke, is it not?
Yes, missus. This is the boy you want. This is Fallon.
The headmaster half stood, then leaned forward across his desk.
Get up, boy. Show Mrs. Grier what a healthy, strapping young man you are.
As I struggled to my feet, he resumed his seat and spoke past me.
You are excused, Ambrose.
Well, of course, sir.
And close the doors behind you.
Yes, sir.
When the doors clicked shut, the headmaster leaned back in his chair. He smiled broadly at the lady.
If you approve, he's yours.
I'm what?
Quiet, Fallon. Let Mrs. Grier have a look at you.
Have a look at me? I don't understand. I'll have my freedom.
Not after having these vile documents in your room, you won't.
The woman set the papers on the desk as she rose from her chair. She was almost my height, held there by the rigid confines of her corseted dress and beaded choker over a high lace collar. She had all the intimidating trappings and superior manners of a person of position. Yet there was something in her level gaze, not a threatening something, but something reassuring, that silenced my protests. Mrs. Grier made quite a show of examining me. I use the word show because that's what it seemed to be.
He's almost reached manhood.
Offered the headmaster, sounding like a salesman of used carriages.
He'll be 18 in a few weeks.
She felt my arms and shoulders.
Strong as an ox.
She examined my teeth,
He may be troublesome at times,
said Hunninger.
but I assure you he is a hard worker. Stemmed, of course, so that won't be an issue.
Finally, she inspected my mop of brown hair.
And we've taught him the basics, of course. Reading, writing, a bit of calculating.
Yes, the Mount did teach me the basics. However, I had to steal the rest of my education. Another thing that I kept secret, thinking it would make me more valuable as a spy. I'd listen to lectures from behind panels, read the texts, and even take the term-end exams, surreptitiously slipping them into the grading stacks under the name of A. Newman, a surname unknown on the world. It drove the faculty crazy over the cycles whenever the non-existent student ranked with and sometimes topped the high honor students. I relished the overheard discussions of the faculty and students as they contemplated who A. Newman was. Of course, I had the advantage of taking only the classes I was interested in. Although I hadn't taken an exam in 2 school terms, the debate as to A. Newman's identity raged on. The woman retrieved the sheaf of papers from the desk.
And what about these, young man? How did this Solarist twaddle come to be found within the walls of the Mount?
I thought about telling the truth. I hadn't a shade where they came from and didn't even know what Solarist meant. But let's face it, the dean was right. I am a wise ass, if only to bullies like the dean and fools like the headmaster. Mrs. Grier was neither a bully nor a fool. There was no way I could wise ass this woman. Yet something in her eyes challenged me, almost playfully, to lay it on. So, without an or and with unyielding eye contact, I replied, "I found them, ma'am."
Well,
The headmaster roared. Mrs. Grier's face lit up with the headmaster's reaction and seemed to say, "Go on, boy." I shifted my focus to Hunninger. "Behind the bushes along the west wall, sir." The headmaster grunted like a rutting pig. "By below, I swear it's the truth. It was shortly after visitation day. Perhaps some families sneak them in."
I assure you our families are some of the finest in New World,
he said to Mrs. Grier.
Our students will be heads of franchise boards and government officials. I doubt...
That is of little consequence.
Said the woman, dismissing the headmaster with a demeaning gesture.
What matters, young man, is what you think of this propaganda. Do you believe any of this nonsense? Do you believe New World is not the center of the universe? Do you believe there are humans on other worlds, that we are their descendants?
How could I believe it? I'd never heard such ideas before. "No, ma'am, I don't believe it,"
Good boy.
said the headmaster. His fist hammered the desktop.
Praise be below, you're not a lost con.
"I do not believe it, ma'am," I continued. "But I have no reason to think it's twaddle, either. At least, no more reason than to believe or disbelieve what we all learn about below and the fount of life. I have seen proof of neither." The headmaster sprang to his feet and leaned forward, supporting his weight on the knuckles of his clenched hands.
Faith does not require proof, Fallon. With proof, you lose faith. And when you lose faith, you have lost your corn.
Mrs. Grier turned to the headmaster.
You are right, sir. The boy will have to be taught the difference between proof and faith. On my honor, I will make that my prime responsibility.
He is acceptable, Mrs.
He addressed her as Mrs. That was valuable information.
Quite acceptable, sir.
She paused, gave me a fleeting glance, then said,
And the price? Was the sum sufficient?
Images flashed through my mind. The leather pouch, the headmaster's pudgy hands, the guilty look on his face. I had just been sold like an animal. I should have been upset. By below, I should have been outraged. But I wasn't. The headmaster's face turned scarlet. He stared down at the desk as he spoke.
We will miss you, Fallon.
I guess he couldn't look me in the eye and lie.
Get your things from your room and meet Mrs. Grier in the front hall.
The woman turned to leave.
Young man, do you have valuables or something you need in your room?
I did not tell her of my prized box of sketches that had been confiscated by Missy Howard some months earlier. The images were all clear in my mind, and I could sketch them again at any time. Just my clothes, missus, and a few grooming items.
Those I can replace.
The headmaster couldn't see the kindness in her dark eyes as she spoke. I turned, opened the doors, and with a grand bow, gestured the lady through. I followed at her heels like a gosling after a goose. I did not shut the doors behind me. Mrs. Grier said nothing as she led the way down the stairs and through the hall. As we approached the front entrance, I raced ahead to open the heavy door.
Thank you, Fallon.
Most welcome, ma'am, I said, following her out. Even though I had been sold into servitude, the sound of the mount's doors being shut behind us was not the sound of expulsion, but of release, if not freedom. Sol Major had set, and Sol Minor was just peeking above the horizon. Gas lamps illuminated the wide stone steps and the gravel drive where an elegant black coach waited. It was drawn by 4 powerfully built horses, 2 white in the lead and 2 black behind. Their lustrous coats gleamed under the combined glow of the gas lamps and the soft, reddish light of Sol Minor. The coachman was a burly fellow who looked uncomfortable in his livery uniform. He was almost my height and had neatly cut hair, graying at the temples. Even though his skin was the hue of creamed coffee, his complexion still seemed pale and weathered like Mrs. Grier's. He opened the carriage door as we neared.
Everything satisfactory, Mrs.?
The man asked in a rich baritone voice.
Yes. Bedford, please pardon me if I defer your introduction to young Fallon here until later. I want to leave this disgusting place as soon as possible.
I offered Mrs. Grier a hand up. As I followed her into the coach, Bedford said,
Pleased to meet you, Fallon.
Thank you, sir. The feeling's mutual. Bedford closed the door. Then the carriage jostled about as he climbed up onto the driver's perch. I positioned myself in the seat opposite the lady, facing the rear of the carriage. With a shake of the reins, we were off. But we didn't get far before we slowed to a stop. I looked anxiously out the window. We were just outside the mount's walls, at the intersection of the drive and the road to Primacitta. Why were we stopping? Had Mrs. Grier changed her mind? Was she going to send me back? I practically jumped out of my boots when the left side door flung open and the carriage shook as someone clambered aboard. It was the copper-haired spy. She pulled the door shut and plopped herself down next to me. A broad smile and sparkling green eyes enhanced her freckled face. She stuck out her hand and said,
Hello, Fallon.
I shook her hand. Her grip was firm.
Name's Aiden. That means fire. I think it's because of my hair.
You are overwhelming the boy with your enthusiasm, Addie.
Yes, grandmother.
I looked quizzically at the lady. She smiled.
You are right not to believe something without proof, Fallon. I owe you an explanation.
Here it came. The revelation. She was not who she pretended to be. She was probably some imposter or possibly a spy herself, come to recruit me. I had often fantasized about this moment, about becoming a spy. But now, I wasn't so sure.
My name is Mara Grier. This is my granddaughter, Addie. I am mostly as I appear. I am the matriarch of a powerful family from Primacitta, at least what's left of it.
My mind finally put things together. Grier, Primacitta, powerful family. The franchise Grier? It was an inappropriate question for someone in my position, but there it was, blurted out and hanging in the air. The founding families of Primacitta held most of the basic franchises on New World. The Grier family held the corn franchise.
You know your history then, do you?
Histories are forbidden, Mrs., I said, looking her straight in the eyes. Then I gave her a small smile and continued. But I've had the benefit of a franchiser's education, smile says. The missus raised an eyebrow at this remark.
So your years at the Mount weren't wasted. Very good, young man, very good. We've been looking for a person like you for some time. It was a family friend who suggested you.
Suggested me? Who?
Missy Howard.
Jenna? When? The lady raised an eyebrow at my familiar reference to Missy Howard.
Oh, several cycles ago, when you were a boy.
I tried not to register my surprise. Franchise family or no, I felt uneasy at having been under this woman's scrutiny, having been spied on, manipulated for so many cycles. Was Missy Howard only using me?
Missy Howard, Jenna, regards your powers of observation highly, and
Mrs. Grier withdrew the Solarist propaganda papers from her sleeve, leaned over to place them in a storage pouch on the carriage wall, and then withdrew something else from the pouch.
she gave me these.
She handed me an item I recognized immediately. It was an assortment of papers bound between two pasteboards and a small cloth purse containing pencils. The papers were some of my sketches. Anger tinged my voice. Missy Howard took those from me months ago. How did you—
We needed to see your ability firsthand. She gave the drawings to Addie, and Addie brought them to me, except the last series from that dreadful night. Jenna brought those herself.
I've lived with Jenna's contract father since early in the spring. He has the orchard down the road from the Mount.
said Addie.
I've been watching you from the tree.
I knew you were there.
Did not.
She opened the portfolio and withdrew a sketch. It was the fourth tree drawing. She pointed to the black figure on the branch with two legs hanging.
That's not me. Could be a boy, could be a cat, but it's not me.
Well, maybe not you exactly, but I knew someone was there.
You sketched the likenesses of every faculty member?
Said Mrs. Grier.
From memory?
Yes, ma'am.
And these?
She had separated out the full-length sketches of Missy Howard stepping out of the tub. I looked from the sketches to Mrs. Grier, then to Aiden, my face flushed with embarrassment.
There's no shame in these, Fallon, no reason to be embarrassed. They are proof of your great talent. She is a beautiful woman, is she not?
I just drew what I saw.
Here's something I'll wager you didn't know. Bedford was the first to realize—
Below! Your driver saw these too?
Bedford's not my driver. He put these in this order, aligned them, and fastened them in this way.
Mrs. Grier laid the pasteboard portfolio on her lap and set the stack of sketches on the pasteboard. Missy Howard was wrapped in a towel and looked out of the drawing as if startled. Mrs. Grier lifted the top pages, literally exposing Missy Howard as she was just starting to step out of the tub. Then she let one page fall after the other, and the pictures moved. It was like watching Missy Howard come to life.
You'll draw me naked one day,
said Aiden.
Aiden!
You know I'm not as young as I look, grandmother. Jenna told me I couldn't do better if he were my first. I might want to contract with him.
Enough, young lady.
Overwhelmed with it all, I closed my eyes and slumped back in my seat. I sorted through the images in my mind, trying to make sense of the swirl of events. Was I being maneuvered and manipulated like a piece in some grand game? For certain, I had been observed, tested, and purchased. The social position of Mrs. Grier and her use of deception clarified my status. "What do you want of me?" I said in resignation. "Am I to become a spy for the corn franchise?" Mrs. Grier laughed.
No, nothing as petty as that. You're not going to be a spy.
Her tone became serious.
Fallon, we need someone with your power of observation and drawing ability. Someone who does not believe one thing or another. Someone who wants to believe something and is seeking proof so he can believe.
She paused, considering the weight of her next words.
We need someone without a family.
Whatever it is you want me to do, it's dangerous then? It was more an affirmation to myself than a question. She nodded. I felt like I had no control over my life. I needed to grasp for some meaning or purpose I could call my own. And what's in it for me? Will I get my freedom?
You are free now, my dear boy.
Then again, what do I get from this? If I survive, that is.
Survive or not, you'll have the proof you need to believe or not believe.
To believe or not believe what?
In cons, in the fount of life, in New World.
Mrs. Grier spared no expense on our trek down country. In Primacitta, I was fitted with new clothing from boots to bowler, and not the stiff black wool servant formals with waistcoats and starched collars. Instead of a waistcoat, I wore a green and brown woolen sweater over a white cotton shirt with a new style collar that folds back over the sweater. A soft brown tweed coat, dark brown slacks, shiny black dress boots, and a black bowler completed my traveling clothes. We took the Plains River Road east toward Primacitta. The road was the major east-west overland thoroughfare through the North Grade. Because New World is sloped from northwest to the southeast, the entire trip was downslope. I had never been any farther away from the mount than Primacitta. None of the books I'd read or lectures I'd listened to had prepared me for my journey. The road was busy, packed with people trying to get to wherever they planned to ride out the coming high conjunction with its crippling snows. The people of New World needed to be off the roads and snug in their homes within the next 5 days. I was amazed that Mrs. Grier had made the trip all the way to the mount with so little time to travel. The sights along our route fascinated me. Starting about a kilometer outside each town, the road was lined with tall, overarching elm trees that must have offered welcomed shade to travelers during red nights. However barren of leaves, their gnarled and twisted branches reached across the road like menacing arms. Beyond the 1 kilometer limit, it was open road. To the left were the plains with their smattering of farms and trees. To the right, the river flowed toward Primacitta. I had seen steamboats and barges moored in Primacitta, but I had never seen them churning their way up and down the river. They too would be moored, and river travel stopped within a day or two. The North Grade stretched well beyond the far bank of the river, all the way down to the Rift Water. South of the Rift Water lay the South Grade, which was pretty much a twin of the north, but its open prairies were used to raise livestock of all sorts. No words of great consequence passed among us in the carriage that need be reported here. We talked about mundane things like the harvest and the approaching high conjunction, although, looking back, I can see that was by design. After all, my ignorance was my major asset. I regularly looked out the window and observed the countryside. The air was hazy with smoke from the field flashing, and it was like viewing the world through sleepy eyes. In places, thin layers of smoke skimmed the surface of the river like wisps of fog. After a period of observation, I would take out my portfolio and pencils and begin to sketch the images stored in my mind. The agrarians harvesting the last of the crops before the crippling snows, the people of the small towns gathering wood for the post-conjunction pyres, Addie asleep, lying with her head resting on Mrs. Grier's shoulder. We stayed 3 nights at small inns that catered to the upper class. All were located on the riverbank where they could host land and water travelers alike. I had expected to share quarters with Bedford in the stables, as would be the custom with male servants during a journey. However, we had private rooms in the inn both nights. We also ate in the inn's dining area and had access to not only the inn's shower rooms, but also their private baths. All 3 nights, I lounged in hot, soapy water. The amenities of the trip helped brighten my spirits. While I was soaking in the tub that 3rd night, the bath door creaked open, and a night-gowned Aiden slipped in, holding a silencing finger to her mouth. "What the bee, Addie?" She shut the door, came to the side of the tub, leaned over, putting her hand on my chest for support, and kissed me on the cheek.
You're a foundling, so you don't have a contract, do you?
She crouched next to the tub. "What's it to you?"
I know I don't look it, but I'm of age.
She rubbed her hand on my chest.
I haven't been with a man yet.
So?
Jenna talked about you.
Yeah? What'd she say?
She said I couldn't find a better man to be my first. And with you being stemmed, I wouldn't be risking my contract.
I didn't know how to respond. I'd been manipulated, bought, and talked about as if I were some object. I felt like I was being used, but my body didn't care. Aiden's hand slid slowly under the water.
Jenna says everything's still. Oh my.
She was leaning in to give me another kiss when there was a sharp rap in the door. Aiden withdrew quickly to the wall next to the door, a hand over her mouth stifling a laugh.
Turn in early tonight, Fallon.
It was Bedford.
We leave before light. It's a long push home tomorrow.
Aiden put her ear to the door and listened as Bedford retreated. She looked at me expectantly.
Well, what are you waiting for?
For you to go.
I can't be seen leaving the bath with you in here. What would grandmother think? You need to go first and see if the hallway's clear.
Hand me the towel then. She smiled and shook her head. Come on.
Don't be embarrassed. Just let me see it.
No, please hand me a towel. She relented. Okay. Now turn around. She complied. I quickly dried off, put on my robe, and tapped her on the shoulder. I'll tell you if the hall is clear. I stepped into the hall, looked both ways, and listened for footsteps, then poked my head into the bath to give her the all clear.
I know you sit up late to draw what you've seen each day.
She opened her gown for only a second before slipping past me.
Draw that. Ha ha ha.
She said, dragging her hand low across the front of my robe as she passed. She most definitely wasn't the child she appeared to be. It was nearly a double dawn, with both souls rising within a half hour of each other.
Why don't you show us your drawings of the trip?
Aiden said coyly. If you please, I said to Mrs. Grier. She smiled.
Yes, I'd like that.
I handed her the portfolio. The ones from this trip are on top. Mrs. Grier studied each drawing before handing it to Aiden. Of course, I only draw things of interest. I shot a look at Aiden, who mocked a pout.
I adore your sketches of the workers in the fields. And you capture the different characters within the pubs.
Her mouth formed a worrisome frown as she asked Aiden to hand back some of the earlier drawings. Did you notice? I said, as Mrs. Grier held two drawings side by side.
Notice what?
Aiden slid closer to her grandmother to examine the sketches. Mrs. Grier shifted the drawings so they could both see.
I don't...
Mrs. Grier handed Aiden one of the drawings and pointed with her free hand to a couple of places on each. Aiden suddenly drew a startled breath. May I? I retrieved the remainder of the portfolio, sifted through a few pages, and withdrew a single page with two detailed portraits. I handed it to the ladies. These two men were at all three of the inns.
It could be coincidence, I suppose.
Mrs. Grier offered unconvincingly. Could be, I agreed. But two things bother me. First, the way they skulk in the background with their hats pulled low. Second, I've seen them before.
Where?
Mrs. Grier's tone was insistent. At the Mount, it was... I began to dig deeper into my portfolio, looking for my sketches of the prisoner.
Don't bother. You won't find the drawings you're looking for. They are much too dangerous to carry around the countryside. Jenna told us everything.
They're the dark men. I pointed to the stouter of the two. He's the one who killed McCrae.
Wessler. Ernst Wessler.
Said Mrs. Grier.
A paid agent of the council. This other must be a cohort. Were they there by chance, or were they following?
She fell into silence. Aiden and I exchanged concerned looks.
End of chapter 2. Next up, The Long Way Down.